Right now, then, on Talking TV, I tell you what, this was when I read about this on Twitter. This sounds like my kind of book. Ben Baker has wrote "The Dreams We Had as Children," all about children's ITV. There it is. Ben's holding it right up now. Hello, Ben. How you doing?
Hello, Chris.
And tell you
Nice to
what,
be here.
Ben. Interesting at the start of your book that you dismissed children's word. I have to say from the start, as
Well,
an
this
eight-year-old,
seems to be a sticking point.
you know
I
what?
have
I had an
spoken to
audition.
several
I had an
people.
audition for children's ward.
Did you really?
That is bad to admit.
Whenabouts?
Well, do you know how it came
Was
about?
it still children's ward or was it the ward?
Oh no, it was children's ward. I wrote asking Granada Television if I could have an audition, and I went to with my mum to. I didn't get on, but interesting. You've picked 40 programs that appeared on children's ITV.
None of which are children's ward.
None of which are children's ward. But I tell you what, I was quite surprised with. It's not just the 80s things. You've got like Dave Spud's in there, for example. I mean, which my kids love. Dave Spud's great. And
good. I never heard of it until this summer, and that was very much the catalyst for me starting this book. Basically, as I thought, I was in a hotel and I put the telly on because I couldn't sleep. It was too warm in the summer. And it was a Saturday morning and Dave Spud was on. And I thought, this is brilliant. Like, why aren't people talking about this more? When's this going to be on next? And it was literally like the week after the CITV channel closed. It was like, oh, yeah, that'll be a bit of a problem.
I was really sad when they closed the channel. I mean, I know there's programming on ITVX, but it's just not the same. I mean, my kids still watch the linear channel, and I think it was a big mistake.
I think the problem is we live in a society which is pushing everything online, but all we're going to do is just have 10 services. We'll just hover and we'll just go. Maybe that. Maybe that it's like if something's on, it's like, and that was a real joy, like Dave Spud was on that morning. I watched it and it was a hilarious episode, and I just thought, this is great. And I want to evangelize about this. Where can people watch it? Fair enough, if you go watch this, it's on ITVX because you can go on there and box set at least the first 2 series of it. But also, there's just a joy of stumbling on something new and going, I didn't know this existed. This is brilliant. And, I worry for sort of a loss of that as we go on.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems to be growing up that you were either a CBBC kid or a CITV kid. My wife, she says, I never used to watch CITV. Have you come across that before?
I have indeed, yes. But it's always, it's common. Oh, it's so common, ITV. And the thing is, in the 80s, sort of, there was more grit to CITV. It had to serve a wide audience, really, from like 5 to 16. And so it would have sort of hard-hitting dramas like Children's Ward and stuff like Bonzo Dodger and the Rest, which was set in a children's home. It's basically Tracy Beaker before Tracy Beaker. Stuff like that. They had hard-hitting stuff. And I think that possibly, a lot with sort of comedy shows, like, do you remember Your Mother Wouldn't Like It?
I don't remember that.
Well, see, that was a very naughty sketch show. It spun off into a thing called Palace Hill, which is about the royals joining a comprehensive school, which was very funny and very mad. And I just think they did comedy with a bit of edge and drama with a bit of edge in the 80s. And I think that's why parents were very much like, let's go to Blue Peter. It's very gentle there. There'll be some lovely knitwear on there.
How easy was it condensing it down to 40, or how long was your list to start off with, the programs you picked?
So I made a list. I checked it twice. It was mostly nice, thankfully. But yeah, I basically went through a lot of newspapers from 83, when Children's ITV officially starts, through to sort of as much of a modern age as I could find, really. And I just sort of made a note of all the ones that sounded interesting that I'd never seen, and lots of the ones that were stuck in my memory as, I remember loving that. And, obviously there's some obvious ones in there, like, Art Attacks in there, Nightmare. Sort of, there's a generation sort of my age who are absolutely horrified of the Moomins, because of that terrifying theme tune it used to have in the 80s and the fuzzy felt sort of stop animation version.
Thing is with CITV as well, especially at Christmas time, you got the adverts, and I remember looking at the things that I wanted, like the big Lego castle sets in the 80s, and never getting them. I should I add, but it was just that unique experience, as well as the programs, wasn't it? I think as a kid.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the thing. I have written books about Christmas TV, and I've read one about like a general one, and then an 80s and a 90s one, and it's fascinating to sort of you watch if you track it through just how things not die, but certainly like things change.
Yeah.
And we complain about mobile phones and streaming services or whatever now, but there's always something. There's always something comes along which is the new thing, and that's in sort of demand. Because like the 90s one at the start of it, you've still got 4 channels. At the end of it, you've got a 5th channel. I mean, channel 5. So, but you've got Sky really expanding by that point. The multi channels has sort of gone on and done big things, and yeah, it's like there's suddenly lots more choice, and so DVD players are coming in, so there's even more content and that sort of thing. So it's interesting, sort of like how people find the content, the stuff they're going to watch.
And what's interesting in your introduction is kind of you mentioned as well, kind of how ITV covered kids television before 1983, because they tried a couple of different things. And then, like you say, bringing in this envision continuity like they did in 1983 before the broom cupboard even started. I think broom cupboard was years after that, wasn't it? Really.
There was a slight difference with CITV because they basically got someone in and pre-recorded a month's worth of links in like 1 or 2 days. So you've got people like Matthew Kelly's the very first one, fully enough.
I've seen the clip of Matthew Kelly. Bob Carroll G's, wasn't he one of them?
Bob Carroll G's, yeah. Super Gran in character for a month.
Really?
Yeah.
God, I used to love Super Gran.
Teabag and T-shirt in character as well. Yeah.
The other CITV show that I remember applying for was Young Krypton. That didn't last very long.
Junior Krypton Factor.
Junior Krypton Factor. That was see that I wish that had carried on. I used to love the Krypton Factor. What without giving you the top 10 or anything like that away though, what would you say your favorite era? Like if you picked a year in particular, what year would you have said was the highlight of CITV?
I would say 1989 is a very, very strong year. You've got a Press Gang and Round the Bend, 2 of my favourites in there, and they're sort of like they're wrapping up some things like Drama Armour finishes, which is a shame because that's a really good play strand, basically one-off plays. But they started sort of putting money into sort of different kinds of shows, really, and I feel there was a lot of very exciting shows, but they're also well made. There's a lot of exciting shows earlier, but they're very, very cheap. And also, I think, like, if you showed your kids some stuff from 1983, I think they'd find it dreadfully slow.
But you should say that I have tried. I have tried. Puddle Lane, I've tried, and they didn't last the full. Puddle Lane, I love. Got all the books, but. Bertha, I think they've managed. Bertha seems to be a hit. That's CBBC,
right? It's kind of stopped. I mean, I loved Bertha when I was that age, so yeah. But it's to come back to something you mentioned earlier. It's like BBC versus ITV. I was never that. I would be like, whatever's on, whatever's got the best program on. It was very much trial by schedule for me. I'd never had this kind of thing, but I have heard of a lot of people who genuinely were just one or the other.
But then CITV had that Friday, I think it was 4:40, something like that slot on a Friday, which was kind of like Nightmare was in that slot. I think you had Funhouse in that slot. They must have been untouchable, whatever program that they put on in that time. I reckon
it was. It very much that felt like the end of school for the week. Weekend starts here, sort of thing. And that is very much where that's the prestige slot for children's ITV, definitely, where all the big new stuff tends to have a run, sort of thing. And it's I assume it's still a thing. I mean, there was Crackerjack a few years ago with Sam and Mark, which I thought was excellent on the CBBC channel. As that kind of like, come on now, that fun the weekend starts here thing. I'm not sure if that exists anywhere for adults or children, really.
I don't know if CBBC still do something called, is it the Saturday Mashup? But it's certainly not on a Friday, I don't think.
No.
Just going back to Press Gang, though. Press Gang is the type of program that you could have easily shown in an evening. I mean, I think it would have, I don't know, it was kind of like teenage, but I think it would have even worked later in the schedule.
Well, Channel 4 used to repeat Press Gang on Sundays at about 6 p.m.
Right.
For people who obviously weren't home at the time that Press Gang was on, like 4:45. But yeah, you're very right. Press Gang is not only is it better than a lot of adult dramas of the time, it's a lot better than a lot of Stephen Moffat's adult dramas.
Absolutely.
Since I don't know, that's going to get complaints.
But I suppose as well for your list, it's been, of course, like what you've been able to find on YouTube, which you mentioned as well, because
that's
it isn't available for streaming, and it must be hard to find things.
It was definitely. See, that's the thing. Like some people said, "Oh, why don't you have this or that?" And I'm like, I just couldn't find either any or enough of it. And there's always, I wanted to tell stories as well with each one. Like I wanted to find these are my top 40, but there's probably a top 40 of like set 75, and I picked the ones that had most to talk about, interesting sort of stories and backstories and all that sort of thing. And yeah, I feel you have that kind of, you always have that thing with children's programs, is that they live so strongly for your era. And then everything you think after, you think that's rubbish. Well, they were rubbish, but ours were brilliant.
Yeah, I think you do. There's a place where you go back and compare things to. There is, and I think there is in terms of production. But then, we're still remembering Danger Mouse, which obviously has been remade since. But
yeah, absolutely.
When you think of the people that they had in the original Danger Mouse, Wind in the Willows, that was another one I loved. Again, ITV. Woof,
another one in the book. Yeah,
Woof,
and that is gorgeous. Yeah, Woof is not in my top 40, and it was one of those. I'm like, I really do like Woof, but there's so much of it, and it does drop off a cliff a little bit. In the first couple of series, I don't think later on, but they're written by Fagan and Norris, who's written a sitcom called Chance in a Million. You may not have heard that, with Simon Callow as the unluckiest man in the world.
And Brenda Blethyn.
And then, yes, brilliant. And then the British Empire.
Wow.
So you don't think about those sensibilities meshing, but Wolf started as a Saturday afternoon thing on sort of just regular ITV, and then I think it was on Saturdays, and then it's sort of like things like Mr. Majika. The Mr. Majika's in the book. I don't know if you remember that.
Is that
one,
Stanley Baxter?
It is Stanley Baxter.
Hey.
Yeah, much loved and still with us, thankfully.
Absolutely, the legend.
But there used to be a good line in, weekend dramas for kids that were sort of, I mean, these are the serials and stuff on BBC One, but you used to get a good sort of set of stuff like Supergran was in that slot. And,
well, the thing is, I think what helped is, my opinion is, I think because you had the regional ITV, and you had Supergram made by Time Tees, and you had Raggy Dolls, for example, Yorkshire. I think they were all just trying to compete with each other. So obviously they all wanted a little bit of,
which is a great thing. That's just it. It's like you have I'm not very much everything is a free market person, because that's a very dark conversation which could go badly. But I think in certain terms of program making, if you've got the best of the best, if you've got all the regions saying, well, we've had this idea, it's like you end up with a really strong period of stuff. Like, as I say, you've got Nightmare, which is completely, I don't think there's been very much like Nightmare before or since.
There really hasn't, has there? I mean, Nightmare as well wasn't afraid to let a kid, kind of crash out of the game, and even at a dark end on a Friday, he wasn't afraid to do that, was it?
Absolutely not. But we loved that. But that was it. And there was, for me, certainly there was a lot of sort of nervous excitement with it because like the life meter was so the more sort of near death you got, your life meter was a
Yeah.
head in a helmet, and bits of it started to come off. And it was like the helmet comes off, then the skin comes off, then it's the skeleton, and it's just some eyes floating in like the in the ether. It's like it's terrifying, but that kind of good terrifying that you like. It's quite thrilling. It's quite exciting.
Nightmare was brilliant. I've only seen the odd couple. I think for a spell they were on BritBox last year, and it still stood up well, I thought.
It does. I think it does. Yeah. I mean, it's like you can say anything about graphics, but everything, looks out of date within 5 years of it being made. That's just, the way of television. I think part of the reason Nightmare stopped is one, they wanted to do something more with virtual reality. So they created a spin-off sort of show for younger kids called Virtually Impossible,
Right.
which wasn't a success. And at the same time, CITV decided to go, actually, the teens are probably not that bothered. So we're just going to kind of really sort of hone that year age grade. So I think it went to about 6 till 11 or something like that. But basically, the teenagers were very much cut out, sort of mid-90s onwards, from stuff, and that's probably why I drifted away very much. Because by that point I was a teenager, and the CBBC did have more programs for teenagers.
Yeah, I guess so. But your book definitely does capture that 40 years that we've had of CITV. And it's great that it's the kind of the tweets, etc., and the popularity it seems to gain on social media. It seems to be doing all right.
It seems. I honestly, as I said, I've written some books about Christmas TV before. They've been popular. Not like buy me a new anything. My washing machine just broken down, so I'm really hoping this one pays that off. To be honest with you, just fixing that. But yeah, it's like I've experienced like excitement about stuff I've done before, but not on this level. Not at all. And again, it was a book that came to me very late. Sort of, I watched that Dave Spud thing. I think that was in August. And I'm like, something in this. And I just thought I'd write an article, and it just ballooned into this whole 220 odd page book.
Wow. So you've wrote all this since August?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, I did. Yes. I mean, sort of like this is what I do.
Yeah.
So I have all day to do it. I've not got a job to fit in around it, but yeah, it's been a lot. It's been super intense.
Well, there you go.
I'm watching a lot of stuff, making the notes and everything.
We had Bernie Clifton on the show earlier, and he took 14 years to do his autobiography. There you go. So,
well, there's all that fun going on in his dressing room.
Well, that's it. I know I should have mentioned.
And also, I imagine the ostrich kept pulling pages out of his hand.
We didn't see the ostrich. We didn't see Oswald. I know,
and he knows that's what people want.
I know. We didn't see Oswald. We didn't see him. Ben, thank you so much for joining us. All the best for the book, though. And
thank you.
If they want to purchase it, we'll put the link on the bottom of the screen as well. I was going to say I'll do that.
Yeah, just go onto your social media thing of choice and type Ben Baker in, or Ben Baker Books. That'll definitely find me. And all the links here will be via that sort of stuff.
All the best. And Ben also does a show Wednesday nights on Noisebox Radio as well, don't you?
I do a lot of shows all over Noisebox Radio. It's very much recommended as a station. I mean, I it's like Victor Kayam. I'm not only the presenter, but I'm a listener too. But yeah, I do a lot of stuff on that. I'm the voice of Noisebox. Every trail is basically me. So I am the very low rent Matt Berry, or Don French, if you will, of Noisebox Radio. I'm proud to be it.
Oh, I like that. That's a good tagline.